Welcome back to Hot Takes and Deep Dives. This is Jess, and I am here with Billy Taylor, who has produced, executive produced, showrun some of my absolute favorite shows on both Bravo and MTV, quite frankly. You worked, just for a quick little rundown, you worked on Flipping Out, Workout, Kell on Earth, the Kelly Cutrone show. And on MTV, you worked on Diary, TRL in the very, very early years, True Life, House of Style. I mean, Billy Taylor, how are you?
Yes, wow.
You made it through the wilderness.
Yeah, somehow, like Madonna.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's
Of
a
course.
pleasure to talk about myself. No, really to talk about how lucky I've been actually, because I feel like if I could have written the script for the things I've done, it's pretty much gone the way I would have written it. So I feel pretty lucky about that.
Mhm.
And not only that, but more importantly, just figuring out what I wanted to do and then being able to do it, I think is also part of like really one of the keys to life.
And did you study filmmaking? Like, did you want to be a director? Like, how did you get into television production?
Did not study it at all. I went to a small school, liberal arts school in Fredericksburg, Virginia, called Mary Washington College. And no, I was a history major. I really just majored in what I dug, which was history. And then between my junior and senior year, I actually got an internship. I got an internship at this, the local CBS affiliate in DC called WUSA, and worked there all summer. Well, worked there for free all summer. Now you can't do unpaid internships anymore. But
yeah, I know.
And no, but it was great because that's when I figured one of our final projects for the internship was to pick a charity and write and produce and direct a PSA for that charity. So anyway, I ended up doing that, and I was like, oh my God, this is so much fun. Like, can I get paid to do this?
Mm-hmm.
And so then I went back to school, and I was like, okay, well, if I could work anywhere on earth, where would I want to work? And the two answers at the time, this was 1994, my two answers were MTV or the David Letterman show.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to work there too because I've loved Letterman since I was a kid. I ended up going to New York, getting the MTV internship and taking that, and then started working at MTV News in January. Sorry, this was the fall of 93. January of 94 is when I started there.
What was the internship?
Well, it's going to sound archaic, but one of the main responsibilities of the interns was to go through all of the newspapers and pick out any articles that seemed to fit through the MTV News filter.
Mm-hmm.
So we would clip out, literally, physically cut out articles, tape them onto a piece of paper, Xerox them, and create all these pamphlets that was the MTV News Daily Digest. And then we would take that around and give it out to all the producers and executives. And that was like actually one of our main jobs was, and then you could like throw a little personality into it. Like maybe if you cut out like a comic or something that was funny, or some quotes from like the New Yorker or whatever, try to get someone's attention. But that was it. It was like cutting out MTV news related stories.
Who were the main news guys, and also who were the main VJs at that time?
So the main news guys, Kurt Loder was there for sure. Tabitha was there.
Mm-hmm.
John Norris was there. I worked the most with Kurt Loder. I worked with John occasionally, but I worked the most with Kurt Loder. The Allison Stewart was there. She was fantastic. Yeah, she's still doing great stuff.
So what came first? You said that you were in like a preliminary version of TRL. Are you talking about, it was either like Total Request or
there was
MTV Live?
So to be fair, I had little or nothing to do with both of those shows. My first big break was getting on House of Style in terms of chronologically,
mm-hmm.
because that was my first PA gig. And then being on House of Style with Cindy Crawford for 5 years really is what took me from being a production assistant all the way up to making shows. Within
Amazing.
That was my grad school right there, working on that show. And also, by the way, having a steady job. I had a steady job that whole time, that's insane.
So tell me what your journey was on House of Style. So you were telling me earlier that you worked with Cindy Crawford, Amber Valletta, Daisy Fuentes, Rebecca Romaine when she was Rebecca Romaine Stamos. Like, because that's a lot of years. Like, what did you do for House of Style?
Fantastic. So it was a PA gig. It wasn't like I had a passion for fashion, anything but I needed a job. And also House of Style was part of MTV News. So I was still kind of in the MTV News family, but then doing this fashion show. So it was fascinating working on that because, there aren't really many news magazine shows anymore. And that was a real pop culture one. So, but also you got to do everything. You got to, do everything to make a TV show and learn how to do it. And sometimes learning how to do it by failing, but learning how to do it. And so that was just the most amazing experience, and getting to travel. I mean, I talked about going on a shoot. I mean, talk about excitement times 10 is like, Billy, we're going to Miami to do the show and I want you to come. What? Mm-hmm. The first time you get like a ticket that you didn't pay for to go on a plane, or the first time you get like a car sent to your apartment to take you to the airport. Oh my God. I mean, talk about exciting.
I know.
It's like mind blowing. You're like 23 or 24. It's like, dude, a car is coming to my apartment to pick me up. Is this insane? Getting to do stuff like that. Everything I did like that on House of Style was for me a first.
I love it.
Like, so many firsts on that show, and I got to learn how to make TV that way.
So were Diary and True Life shows that you, like, what was your role on those two shows?
So the Diary connection actually is I went from House of Style, I went to MTV Production. And so MTV Production did all the studio stuff, which was all the VJ segments, right? So all the Kennedys, all the Bill Bellamy's. Rebecca Romaine had a movie coming out, and they were going to do a diary with her, and she actually recommended me for the job. So it's still House of Style getting me a job. So
Diary was already in production on air.
Yeah. That was all Jesse Ignanovich. That was all. He created the show. He started that show, and they were multiple seasons in by this point.
Okay.
And I had never worked on it.
MTV Diary, I have to tell you, this was one of the best shows that MTV ever produced. They were full, either 30-minute or hour-long documentaries for anyone who was about to release an album. Like, we're talking like Britney had one, Jay-Z, J-Lo, Beyonce, Christina, Kelly Clarkson, Lindsay Lohan, Justin Timberlake, the Backstreet Boys,
or a movie or something.
Brittany Murphy had one.
Yep. But with Rebecca, she had a movie coming out, and she had also hosted House of Style. So she recommended me for that job, and they called me. And they said, hey, Rebecca recommended you for this job. Do you know how to shoot a camera? Right? Do you know how to be a cameraman? And I don't know if I would recommend this to anybody, but of course I said, absolutely. But I had never done it before in my life. So I got the gig. But again, I mean, I got enough to make a show out of it. But I'll tell you, having shot that and then having to sit in and edit with it, you're like, ooh, wow, I certainly didn't cover that very well, but you learn from it. And I guess it was good enough because I ended up doing another dozen diaries probably.
Which diaries did you shoot? Were you producing them or were you just filming them?
Yeah, so as the producer of the TV show for a diary specifically, and probably only, you're doing everything. So they give you a camera bag with some tape stock in it and some granola bars and one microphone. And they say, go and meet Kanye West in Chicago. You're going to follow him around for 2 weeks and then come back and cut it. And then, the only thing we shot with a real crew were the interviews. Right. If you remember, the interviews were totally black background, and then they were all to camera. And there was actually a wide angle lens on it. So you could so people could really get in the camera. So the first one I did was Rebecca. I did some random ones. Like I did Jackie Chan, she was like the nicest guy ever. And then I did Kanye. I was on the road with Kanye.
Okay, can we talk about that?
Yeah, totally.
Was this for his first album?
Yeah, it was for the second single off of that album was Hitting. Through the Wire had already blown up. And I went to meet him out on the road, and that just followed him around on the road.
And so where did you follow him exactly? Like in Chicago?
He took me to his mom's house.
Yes.
His mom made dinner for us and a couple of his friends. And then she had all of his old artwork from art school. And he talked us through a bunch of drawings that he had done. And he was like, held one up and he was like, see, this is how I see music. Like I see music in colors. And then he was like, see this red, like this is the hi-hat, and see this is the bass. And he went, see, this is how I see music. He's like, or something. Well, I just did a horror, but he like literally did the sounds. And he was like, you guys see that, right? And all of his friends were like, nah, we don't see. But that was really an interesting moment because I felt like he was being sort of very vulnerable and like really, letting us inside. And to see him as an artist like that was interesting to me. But then we went to Ralph Lauren and did a big shopping spree at the big giant Ralph Lauren there in Chicago. We went out to this big, I want to say it was like a boys and girls club, but if it wasn't, it was something similar. And he went out and he surprised everyone. He did a few songs and then, just a big meet and greet with all these, I think it was like underprivileged kids, like some kind of after school thing. And then we went to San Francisco and I followed him around San Francisco, went to a radio station, went to the show. Then we flew from San Francisco to LA. He had a house in LA then. And we did a show at the House of Blues. We did a show. I followed him around at a show.
But this is amazing. You're literally on the road with him.
Yeah. I have a Sony PDF camera and I'm just shooting whatever I want the whole time I'm with him.
So here, I looked it up. So this is The College Dropout was his first album. So Through the Wire, we all know was his first single. Then it was Slow Jams. Was it Slow Jams that was hitting?
No.
All Falls Down. That's what it was. Okay, so this is
yeah, that's it.
So this is 2004. Yeah, and then Jesus
that
Walks was the next one. Wow, damn, he has a lot of singles off that album.
Yeah, it was before Jesus Walks.
Wow, so
then we also went into I went to into the studio with him in LA, he was working. He was working with an artist. He was not stuff for him, but stuff for an artist that he was trying to bring along. I think his name was Bumpy Johnson. He was looping some beats. So he had all these. I went with him to Amoeba Records too in LA. He was just record shopping, and it was just me and Kanye, and he was just shopping for records, and I was just shooting him, like looking at records. And then we went to the studio, and then he was ripping a bunch of samples off records and then looping them and coming up with beats and stuff. And yeah, it was fascinating.
Literally last night, I watched his interview with David Letterman for Letterman's new Netflix show. I literally watched it last night.
Oh, wow. Oh, but the one from the previous season, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it must have been, maybe it's from last year or something, but it was phenomenal. It
was good too. I will tell you too, again, I didn't become best friends with Kanye over 2 weeks, right? We were just working together and it was great. But I will tell you, more than a year later, in 2005 at the Video Music Awards in Miami, we were doing this thing where they wanted to follow artists around for a little additional content before they performed. And they wanted me to follow Kanye because I'd already worked with him. But you don't assume that anyone's going to know who the hell you are, right?
He gave you a big hug?
No, not that far. But they were like, all right, so Kanye, this is Billy. He's going to be following you around. And Kanye was like, I know Billy. He's known me since I was nobody. And I was like, I just felt like I was kind of like, oh, like I was like, that's so cool, like because I wasn't gonna pretend like I knew who, remember when we hung out? Like we didn't hang out, man. We worked together for a few weeks, a year and a half ago. But for him just to say like, oh, of course I know Billy. He knew me before I was anybody. I was like, oh my God, that's so sweet, Kanye. Thank you.
Oh my God, I love that.
There's so many people around. He's meeting new people all the time, but for him to throw it out there. It was nice.
Which other diaries did you produce?
So I did Ashanti,
Mm.
who was lovely. I did, and then Fat Joe, got to meet Jennifer Lopez. T.I., and I ended up working with T.I. again on a series for them in 2008. It was called The Road to Redemption.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was the showrunner on that show too.
It was after he got out of prison or something, right?
Before he was going to go back.
Into prison.
It was actually counting down the days. It was
I totally remember this.
45 days to go. And then there was a whole countdown. The cool thing about that show too, though, was that I was in the studio with T.I. when he was recording songs for his album with Justin Timberlake.
Oh, right. He has that song with Justin Timberlake. It's actually a great song.
Dead and Gone, the name of it.
Dead and Gone is so good.
So yeah, that was, to be there when they're recording and like writing and making up and all that stuff.
You didn't have anything to do with the Britney diary, did you?
No, but a good friend of mine worked on the Britney show and ended up getting an Emmy Award out of it. Billy Murphy is one of the best editors on earth. And remember the Britney, it was like a limited series.
Chaotic?
No, out all night or something.
Billy Taylor. Yeah. I need to tell you something about this. Yes. I need to tell you something about In the Zone and Out All Night. I've actually talked about it before on the podcast because I love watching it. It's still all on YouTube. That is one of the best things MTV ever produced.
Yep. No, it's really cool. The way they shot it, the way they cut it. I mean, well, it won them an Emmy. So there you go, right? And sometimes the good guy does win. I will say, though, I did do one Britney random thing for Nickelodeon. So Nickelodeon was doing this big, called The Big Help, and they enlisted Britney to shoot a promo for it. Mm-hmm. It was actually soon after September 11th, 2001, and they were doing this big thing. So I shot with Britney, who brought along her boyfriend, Justin Timberlake, and I tried to shoot them together, and he was like, "I'm good." And I was like, "Yeah, it'd be fun." He's
iconic.
Like, "I'm good." But that was kind of funny. But yeah, shot with her just for a few hours. It was just in a studio with a green screen, couple of lines, but she was super nice.
So, God, wow, that's amazing that you did all those diaries. The reason why it was great was because it was so lightly produced. It was nothing like reality television. It was a version of reality television that was way more docu-series.
I agree. That's how I prefer to make anything in this particular space, whether it's faux documentary or faux fly on the wall. I still like to cover it in that same style when possible. Look, there are shows like formatted shows, or people call them like shiny floor shows, right? Like Dancing with the Stars. It's just a different show, right? But anything in the doc space that I can do that just lets people just be people, that's my preference. And that's what it was with Diary. Literally, half the time they don't even know when you're rolling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're rolling all the time. I mean, not really, but like you're rolling most of the time, and you hope that you get enough for like a kick-ass show.
The slogan at the start of every episode, it always had the artist saying like, "You think you know, but you have no idea."
Oh,
and you just get chills.
Yeah, no, that must have been Jesse who wrote that. But one other, like I started doing really random ones. Like I did Diary of One Tree Hill. Right? So it's like go from like Kanye West. And I'm like, and Kanye would literally bring me out on stage. He'd be like, "Look who I got here tonight." And of course, he didn't say Billy, right? He'd say, "Look who I got here tonight. MTV."
Yeah.
So like I became the personification of MTV, right? And I'd walk out onto the stage with my little camera, like, "Hey guys," but like it was pretty cool. And he'd like wave me out from like, and I'd come out, and then he'd go, "Say hello, MTV," and then the crowd's like, I mean, it's like you're like, God, I hope I hit record. Hope I did double punch record or whatever. But those moments are, you can't even describe them in words. But so going back to One Tree Hill, though, can I tell you like a crazy, weird story that kind of actually brings it from all the way back then to now? So I met Hillary Burton previously because I also did some Uncensoreds for MTV.
Oh, cool.
And one of the Uncensoreds that I did was TRL Uncensored. So I interviewed all of the hosts of TRL, which Hillary Burton was actually literally found in Times Square.
I know.
And plucked out of there and then just had this career, right? And she's such a sweetheart. But Uncensored, the premise of the show is just, you know, you're getting the behind the scenes stories of these famous moments, right? Like of Mariah Carey bringing out the ice cream, like in some crazy getup, like no one knew she was coming. Like, so like, wait, what was this? Like Tom Cruise coming on, and you know, you interview all the producers and cameramen or audio people or whoever can tell a part of that story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interviewing Hillary Burton, and I, in doing my research, had found out that Ben Affleck had kind of groped her when she was interviewing him for Pearl Harbor.
This became a thing.
Right. So cut to
Yes.
Me Too movement, and Hillary Burton comes out on Twitter and she's like, yeah, Ben Affleck actually grabbed my boob on TV. And then in the interview they started showing on Access Hollywood and all that stuff was the interview that I did with her for Uncensored. Now, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but when we were telling the story on Uncensored, it was because it was like, ha ha, isn't that funny? But cut to 15 years later, it's not that funny. So, which is more fucked up?
That is wild.
I mean, I'm telling you, when I was asking her about it, it wasn't like, no one was like, yeah, how inappropriate. And I didn't have an angle on the story. I was like, oh, I heard like Ben Affleck, you were interviewing him in the junket and he got up, and she even says like, he got up and kind of tweaked my boob. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, wasn't that weird? Or I was like, yeah, it's like, I don't want to be touched, you know, like, whatever. I'm probably misquoting it, but cut to, you know, and he actually, Ben Affleck, like came out and apologized. And he said, so, I mean, talk about how I'm talking about being around for a while. It's a great gig. There's no crew. It's just me. Then I come back to New York. I edit it for a few weeks. Done. On to the next one.
So from there, did you go directly from MTV to Bravo?
So yeah, the one last thing that some younger listeners might have heard of was I did develop, and then I was the showrunner on Eighth and Ocean, which Eighth and Ocean was actually right after Laguna Beach, but right before The Hills. And it was about models living together in Miami, but in the same style. And it was the same people that were behind Laguna Beach. It was Liz Gately and Tony DeSanto. And they had brought me in. They said, hey, we have this show we want to do. It's called Model Apartment, but we want it to be the same way in Laguna. Like, we don't do any interviews, but we want it to be different. Like, what's the style of this show? Right. And so I came up with how I wanted to shoot the show, and they're like, great, let's make a pilot. And then we ended up going to series, and we did 10 episodes. And that was a lot of fun. Now, it didn't get picked up, which is why no one's heard of it, or only a few people have heard of it. Mm-hmm. But in hindsight, it actually did really well, because ratings sort of like plateaued after that and then started going down a bit. But that show in 2006-07, that's what actually got me meetings to get my Bravo gig. So that was the best thing that came out of it.
It was like a launching pad in a way.
Yeah, because it actually had a lot of buzz. I hate sounding like a Hollywood douchebag, but it had a look, it had a flavor, it had a style. You know, it was sort of you know, coming in the riding the coattails of Laguna, but it wasn't Laguna.
You know,
they were older.
Speaking of those types of shows like Laguna Beach and The Hills, what do you think about Selling Sunset?
Well, I actually did the pilot on Selling Sunset.
You did?
Yeah.
You filmed the pilot of Selling Sunset?
I was the showrunner of the pilot for Selling Sunset, yeah. So here's the thing about it.
Yes, please go deeper on that.
So Adam DeVillo was the guy who was, you know, the sort of like head of Laguna and The Hills and the city and blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
So Flipping Out was on the air, and he called me and he's like, Billy, I knew him from MTV from forever. And he's like, Billy, man, come in and me. I have a show I think you might be good for. So he told me about Selling Sunset. I was like, yeah, man, sounds great. I'm going back to shoot Flipping Out in whatever, a month or so, but that sounds great. I'd love to do it. And he was going out of town. So he had to actually leave town altogether. And he was like, well, we have to shoot this pilot. So I don't know. I did the pilot how I would have done it. I shot more like cinema verite, like fly on the wall, right?
Yeah.
I did more of that type of stuff for the pilot. No, and anyway, it got picked up and now they're 3 seasons deep. You know, I don't know how they'd make that show, but I know like with me, I'd try to be as hands off as possible. Obviously, look, and especially just so everyone understands, especially when you're doing a pilot or a pilot presentation, which is even shorter, you don't have much money. So, you know, like I can't shoot for 2 weeks like I do on Flipping Out and hope to get 45 minutes, right? You have like 2 days. So it's just, you have to be able to like, okay, Chriselle, we have 8 scenes today. You know what I mean? Like I kind of need you just to get to the point of meeting this person. And then like, we got to wrap, because you just have to do it that way. There's no other way to do it. You can't just follow around, you know, the Oppenheim guys and hope you have something, because you only have 2 days.
In filming Selling Sunset, and I know this was like literally day 1 of Selling Sunset, since you had come from Diary and Flipping Out, which really were fly on the wall docu-series shows.
Yes.
Did you have any judgment toward a Selling Sunset or The Hills or Laguna Beach, which are in large part, like it's common knowledge that these are fabricated scenarios, situations. These people aren't even really selling real estate. A lot of them are just actors, and it's soft scripted. Like everybody knows this.
Well, here's the thing, though, not to interrupt you, but unfortunately, a lot of them aren't actors, but they're being asked to act, and that fundamentally that's the problem. And this isn't about Selling Sunset or Laguna or, you know, or any other heavily produced and directed and written series. This to me is about philosophically. If I was a really good writer, I would be writing movies and I'd be making 10 times the amount of money. You know what I mean? Like I'm not a great writer. There you go. I said it. You know, I like following people around and then finding the story, right? So I feel like some people, you go out and try to do these shows and it's like you're asking writers who don't write to write, and you're asking actors who can't act to act. So some people can pull it off in a way and some people just can't. I mean, what was Duck Dynasty? Like there was nothing fly on the wall about Duck Dynasty, but they caught something. They caught these people at the right time, and they did it in just the right way that no one cared if it was real or not. Now, that got really, really popular, and the pendulum started swinging back the other way, where then people were like, now I'm sick of all that fake shit.
So now you're at Bravo, and you get these gigs. You executive producing 2 of my all-time favorite shows on Bravo, nice. Flipping Out and the one and only Workout with Jackie Warner.
Very different shows.
Let's talk about Workout first. Actually, interestingly, so I interviewed Jackie Warner for this podcast.
I listened to a little bit of that. I did my research, deep dive.
What did you think about? So she had a couple of claims in there. Did you work on all 3 seasons?
I did not. I only did the 3rd one.
Okay, so she actually said the 3rd season was her favorite.
Get out.
Yeah, in the interview, she said the 3rd one was her favorite.
Okay, there's literally a quote in a magazine somewhere that when it came out, she said if I saw the showrunner in a dark alley, I'd beat the shit out of him. So I find it hard to believe that after all this time, she now says it's her favorite.
Wait, no, that's so hilarious, because she told me in that interview that she hated the executive producer on season 2.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, great. I'm glad then. I'm glad
I think you're off the hook.
Okay,
Jackie.
Good. That's good.
I do, in my heart, I do feel like you're the one she liked.
Oh, That's great.
She hated the second season because it was a lot of them pushing her around into these fabricated situations. And she also claimed, which I do not believe, that all of the trainers were not in fact trainers, that they were actors. And after we did the interview, I went through the Instagrams of every single trainer who was on workout, and guess what? They're still fucking trainers.
Yeah. No, I think that was a little revisionist history on her part, because that was definitely something where if we're shooting somebody, training somebody, I mean, there are laws, and there is, you do have insurance, and there's certain things where, but also simultaneously, it's pretty easy to get your training certificate online. So let's not make it out like they had to get a PhD from MIT either. But they all had to have some sort of certification in the state of California, right?
So did you do workout before Flipping Out?
No, I actually did workout after season 1 of Flipping Out. So okay. I actually had already gotten my feet wet on Flipping Out and then went right into workout. Now, the tough thing about workout is that, at least for me, because I like, having my own sort of spin on things. So it's hard to come into something that's already this established series. Now, not only that, but as we were just talking about, I had done so much doc stuff that this way of making shows, between you and me, I was fucking making it up every day. This whole the story beats and the scenes and the whatever, I was like, what is that? You know what I mean? So I was just kind of figuring it out every day. I think that we did get some moments, and I think that once we were in our scene, I think that our coverage was very fly on the wall, and I knew I could trust to roll on something until I feel like we had, if not the intention, at least we had something. Maybe it wasn't what we thought we were going to get, but I could always be like, all right, we got this 5 ways now, let's move on. But that was different for me, totally different for me.
Than doing just in the past, and even the Flipping Out experience?
Well, yeah, so a VJ segment, it's pretty cut and dry. Now, everything else is either, some sort of version of fly on the wall, or, it's a straight up, or it's this hybrid of things, right? Where you have these scenes and you kind of have an intention for them. And, but it also depends on who do you tell what, right?
That's a great point.
Are you telling Brian Peeler how to feel, what to do? Are you telling him who this new client that's coming? So that's where the chess game comes into it as a storyteller, because, people love to say it's all acting, it's all fake, it's all whatever, but it's my job for it not to be that, right? So I don't go in and say, all right, man, here's what you're going to do. I go in and I go, hey man, there's a client coming in. Go work out in the corner. They'll be in at some point. And then sometimes I wouldn't even tell my camera guys where the person was coming in from, because I wanted my camera guys
to feel natural that you were catching them.
They hear something and then it's oh, wait, what? So that's the way you can do things to still get some genuine reactions, or genuine, people actually having real feelings. It's in the way that you do it. But it's not I don't know how everyone else does a show, but you don't go in and you go, okay, Peeler, here's the deal. Tammy's coming in. She's 25. These are her likes and dislikes. Maybe people do that. I've never done that. And I never told them if it was supposed to be funny, if it was supposed to be sad, if it was supposed to be dramatic, if I wanted them to cry. I was just here's what we're doing, man. You're going to train this person. They're going to be here in 5 minutes. So, go over and get ready. And then I wouldn't talk to them again until we were done.
How was it working with Jackie specifically?
Does Jackie listen to this?
No.
Look, I feel like even Jackie would say she's not the easiest person in the world to deal with. Having said that, I think it was fine. I mean, she's not a very warm person.
Mm-hmm. Did she try to control any of the storyline?
I remember her not being very happy with some storylines, because again, I'm not telling her that much either.
Let's get into the main event. Flipping Out. So how I was given your name actually was because I had Megan Weaver on, and she mentioned you in the interview, and she said you really should talk to Billy Taylor, and she credits you as you being the visionary behind the first few seasons of Flipping Out that made it so amazing, and that when you left, a certain magic was missing. So how did you wind up on Flipping Out? Like, what's the story?
So I got that gig. I'd never done a Bravo show before, and I'd only really worked at MTV. So I saw the Bravo opportunity as a big chance for me just to diversify. You don't want to stay with the same, you only know so many amount of people, right, at one place. And there's only so many jobs. So it was a goal that I set to try to work somewhere else. And I got this offer to do this show at Bravo called Flipping Out. And I always vowed I would never live in Los Angeles because I'm a New Yorker. But it's like 9 months, right? I mean, if I hate it, I'll just come back, I did give up my apartment, though.
What neighborhood did you live in?
Well, I first lived on the Upper East Side, which is, I think, where everyone lives when they first come to New York City. And then I was like, oh, well, I don't actually want to live here. I want to live in the East Village because that's where I go out all the time at night. Mm-hmm. But this was this was like 1995, like heroin, people unconscious on my front stoop days. But I was 23 years old. So I'm like, excuse me, can I get by? People with needles, like still hanging out of there, like really fucked up. So yeah, I lived in the East Village. Then I was like, well, actually, I really want to live in the West Village. So then I lived in the West Village, which was tremendous.
Where was your apartment?
Horatio in Washington.
Amazing.
So just south of the meatpacking district.
Yeah.
And then my favorite place ever, one of my top 5 New York places ever, which is now closed, Tortilla Flats.
That just closed.
It was a few. That was my local.
The best.
I loved all those places so much, and at that time in my life, especially.
I love to switch up my jewelry with the seasons, and I just learned about Victoria Emerson, a jewelry line that offers wrap bracelets, boho cuffs, earrings, and necklaces that I am super into. The pieces are perfect for minimalists like me, or if you're into layering necklaces, double wrap bracelets with little gold touches and stones. Although I'll tell you, my favorite thing about the jewelry at Victoria Emerson is that most styles are the kind where you can adjust the fit to be as loose or snug as you like, and the pieces are also super easy to take on and off. So here's the deal. Brand new styles just landed online for the fall season. You guys can get a buy one, get one free on the entire collection by visiting victoriaemerson.com/deep dives and use the code deep dive. Once again, that's victoriaemerson.com/deep dives and use the code deep dive.
So I moved out to LA to do Flipping Out, and during pre-production, which is when we hire the rest of the crew and all the people and whatever, but also you're kind of doing your research on the show that you're about to make. Now, this was 2007, so it's not ancient history, but in terms of TV, it's 13 years ago, which, is a pretty long time ago. And this happens all the time now, where it's like the network expects you to have the entire season mapped out before you've even shot anything.
Really?
Right? Oh, yeah.
Wait, even these reality shows?
Yes. For almost every show.
Give me an example. Not a Selling Sunset example. Like you're saying, like Housewives has... that would be impossible.
I can't speak to a show I haven't done. I will tell you, though, that if you have that kind of a run with that many episodes and you're paying out that much money, you want to kick the tires.
You want to know that something's going to happen.
Yeah, you at least want to know some tentpole things, right? The Real Housewives of Orange County going to Ireland. They didn't just come up with that mid-season. Yeah. You know what I mean? But that's what I mean. There's certain things.
But so I agree. Yes, obvious to that. But they also don't know that Luann is going to get arrested.
No, of course not. But I'm just saying, I'm contrasting it to Flipping Out. So let's say one thing's planned. Let's just say the trip to Ireland's planned.
Sure.
But you also know, like, maybe so and so is going to have a party, and so but you don't know.
Yes.
But basically, right? Some tentpole stuff. I'm not saying it's all preordained, but with Flipping Out, it was like there was nothing, and they didn't ask either. It was like, all right, good luck next week. Because we had 2 weeks per episode of following Jeff Lewis around to find some story. And that was the scariest and the most exciting thing ever. Actually, it's a good thing I had never done a Bravo show before, because I would have probably been so intimidated I couldn't have gotten out of bed. Like literally, I was like, my job was to follow this guy around and turn it into a show. And the great thing was because of Jeff's philosophy on it, he was like, look, I'm going to do my day. You guys just try to keep up. So he's not here for me. I'm here for him. So it's like, I'm not at the steering wheel, right? He is. My job is just to capture that and to keep up. But that's what I wanted. It's a high wire with it's no net, right? And so that's what I would tell the crew. Like you see all these, maybe you hear these stories about people getting like 15 entrance shots or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And some people still would like, some camera guys would go like, oh, hey man, can you back up? I didn't get the entrance shot. And in my pre-production meetings, I'm like, fuck that. If you don't get the entrance shot, I don't care. Get inside. Because you're trying to, you're going, oh, I missed the entrance shot, but now you're missing something else inside. It's like, if you get it, you get it. If you don't get it, you don't get it. Your job is to follow this guy around and to keep up and to not scratch his car and to not smell and to, you know what I mean? Because like your job is to be invisible. Don't talk to him, roll the camera. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like that. It was that fly on the wall. And my crew, which we basically had for the whole run, all 11 seasons, most of the people that started with me on day one were there at the end. Mm-hmm. It was an amazing crew. And so we just turned it into an amazing machine. And we would meet him at 9:00 in the morning. We'd put mics on people. We'd start rolling, and we would roll all day until 6 or 7 o'clock. And that was it, 5 days a week. It's like a 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
Very little personal life, no weekends, no dinners, like none of the normal things that are every scene in every Housewives show. Right. We shot everything in between. We shot him actually doing his real job, flipping houses. And it was the best thing ever because it was so fulfilling to make a show this way. It could be, from that perspective, the best thing I ever do because of just, we were allowed to do it, right? 2 weeks per episode for 45 minutes. Amazing and scary.
Why did you leave after 4 seasons?
I got a job offer, honestly, that I couldn't refuse.
And what was that?
It was at Kinetic Content. They do Little Women and they do Married at First Sight. All of these shows that they did after I left.
And what was your job there?
So I was, my title was SVP of Development and Production, Development and Current.
Okay.
And so, look, after 4 seasons, I loved flipping out. I got the opportunity to get in on the ground floor at a brand new production company. So of course, like in my head, like I'm writing the movie script. Totally. It's like, yeah. I'm on the ground floor, social network, becomes this huge company, somebody plays me in the movie, you know what I mean? I end
Justin Timberlake is playing you again.
Cut to, I didn't sell any shows, and 2 years later, my contract wasn't renewed, and I was out on the doorstep with just having had a newborn baby, and one that was 13 months old. No, look.
Is that the point at which you went back to Bravo and did the Kelly Cutrone show?
No, actually, I did Kelly. I don't know if this matters or makes any sense, but there was a year there where I had an overall deal with Bravo, where I made a deal with Bravo that I would just be showrun for them. And so after flipping out in 2009, I went from flipping out right into shooting Kell on Earth in the fall of 2009.
How was it to work with Kelly Cutrone?
Let me start by saying I have communicated with Kelly fairly recently. Mm-hmm. She was a total sweetheart and was like, oh my God, Billy Taylor, how the fuck are you? Da 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 da. She's a riot and she's a very fun personality. Unfortunately for the show, when we were shooting the show, I was doing it the way I do flipping out.
Mm-hmm.
I was letting things just happen. And at some point, and you should ask Kelly this just to confirm it, but at some point, I think what she realized is we kind of had People's Revolution like imploding. Like I
Okay.
kind of had like it like coming off the rails.
So Kelly Cutrone was a PR like maven in the day, and People's Revolution was her fashion company, essentially, right?
It's a PR company.
It was a PR
A
company.
lot of their clients were fashion, but it was
Got it.
public relations.
Which is why people see her online now. I think she may have filmed some scenes with Leah McSweeney for New York.
So I think that what I think the case is, I think that at some point, if not anymore, I think at some point, People's Revolution, they did have Married to the Mob as a client.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think that's how they know each other.
Cool.
If not, then it's just probably through friends. But I think at some point, Married to the Mob was a client of Kelly's. But yeah, I can believe them knowing each other. They're both downtown girls. So Kelly, I think, came to the realization that her company was kind of falling apart. I mean, we had her getting fired backstage at New York Fashion Week. Like we had that on camera. Like he was like, "Hey, you're fired." So this was in 2009. This is when people like Kelly started getting executive producer credits just to be on a show.
Just to give them access to her.
I don't even know why, to be honest with you. I feel like it was an ego thing. It's an undefined role. You're getting an executive producer credit for what? Just because you're opening the door for us? You know what I mean? Like, but what happened is, because she realized what was happening, she was like, well, I'm an EP. I'm going to stop this. And so this is when it kind of went off the rails for the production, because she wouldn't let us interview everyone that we wanted to interview. And then she also insisted that she be sent all of the questions. When you're having to do that, it's not a good look for making a compelling TV show.
So she, at a certain point, she just like would refuse to sort of participate.
Well, she stopped doing interviews herself. Yeah. I mean, she would talk about all this, I believe, but she stopped doing interviews, and then she got control over basically like what we were asking. And so that part kind of doomed us. But I still feel like I walked away with a great show. But then I had to go back to do Flipping Out.
What's your stance on Housewives?
I can't do a deep dive on Housewives. Here's the thing. And Jeff Lewis says this all the time. And he's like, I feel like if you sign up for a show, you've got to be real. You know? And if you're not going to be real, you're just robbing a bank. You know what I mean? Like you're getting paid to be on a show because you are supposed to be an interesting person. So be you. Don't try to control every narrative. Don't try to censor yourself to be Miss or Mr. Perfect. You know, and that's the thing about Jeff Lewis. And I don't know if you listen to Jeff Lewis's radio show.
Yeah.
But that makes his radio show so compelling, because he's just himself. And he can't stop himself. Maybe he'd like to sometimes, but like that's why he's so compelling, because he's just so real.
Okay, so name another Jeff Lewis. Who else comes close to being that authentically interesting on camera, who can also carry a show like that?
Yeah, I think Bethany Frankel, I think for sure. Although I will say that Bethany and Friedrich show,
yeah,
as a producer,
yeah,
what it looked like to me is that both of them just said, what's the least amount I can shoot? Like, how many hours a week minimally can I shoot for you guys to have a show? And then they're like, oh, okay, 3. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it was something where it was just like there was nothing in watching that show where you were like, oh, this isn't just a total setup.
Every episode was a deal falling through.
Didn't it seem to you like every scene was like, hey, I got 5 minutes. Let's just bang this out.
Yes, totally.
Right? I mean, it just,
yeah.
And those are two really compelling people. So I feel like that. And like, look, neither one of us know if that's true or not, but I feel like that's just, in watching it, it just seemed like, wow, how long did that take? 10 minutes?
Aside from, say, like Flipping Out, what docu/reality show do you think is doing it best or did it best?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm Deaf U which I actually almost did the pilot for that on Netflix. I think that's really well done. I think Last Chance U, which is a completely different kind of show, but again, people just being themselves and a crew putting in the work to get those moments and then telling a great story. Mm-hmm. It's storytelling, right? That's what it is.
Where do you think like a Housewives, which starts out like that, I think like the original Orange County started out that way, like where does it go wrong? Like is it just that it becomes so popular, the women become so famous? And even like the Real Housewives of New York really started, it did feel fly on the wallish. Like everything involving Jill Zarin felt in her first season or two, it really felt like we were seeing a real human being.
Which again, right? So all coming out, all starting around the same time, which is late 2000s, right? 2008, 2009, right? Well, let me start somewhere else. The Kardashians ending, right?
Yeah.
I think that Kris Jenner said it best. Why make a show, or why would people watch a show when they can just watch my kids on Instagram every day? Right? There's nothing that's happening in their lives that's going to be a revelation on the show. So like social media and their use of social media effectively sort of gave away the house, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's like, well, if I'm already seeing Kylie's latest makeup shade of lipstick, then I don't need to wait until,
6 months later. Yeah.
Whatever it is. So talk about an incredible run. You let the cat out of the bag, right? Once the one time you go, look, here's what we really need.
It's over.
Forget about it. The horses are out of the barn, because the next time, so-and-so comes to set, it's like, just tell me what you fucking need now. I'll give it to you in 10 minutes and then we can all go home, So once they know that's an option, why not do that every time?
Mm-hmm. You've nailed it.
That's the thing with flipping out. I mean, flipping out never changed because I never said to him, this is what I fucking need. It was like, we just rolled. We rolled all day. And then we said, see you tomorrow. All the way through season 11.
What are you working on now and like next?
I just finished a pilot for Bravo last Friday that I can't talk about. I know for sure I can't talk about that. But hopefully that it's with two pretty big names, and it's a great idea for a show. So I hope it goes. But there are a few things. I've got a meeting next week with a company. So, this is the in-between time. It would be great to always go, from week to week, always having a gig. But sometimes in this business, you're between gigs.
Yeah. So, you're a super fascinating guy. I mean, you've worked on some of the most iconic show. I mean, really, like the MTV stuff shaped the way pop culture grew throughout the 2000s. So, I mean,
and you want to know the good news? You know what the great news is?
Residuals?
No, the wonderful news is that even when I was doing it, I knew I was so fucking lucky, and I was suck it all in. Like that moment of coming out on the stage with Kanye West and being called, I mean, he didn't know my name, but it was like, hey, MTV. But still, like walking out on that stage, like that night, I'm like, that was fucking cool. I tried not to take any of it for granted, and that's the best part, is when I was doing it, I was like, I'm so lucky. I will say two other quick things that you can put in or not, but one of the most interesting things going back to MTV News is that in 2005, I actually went to two massive disasters. One of them at the beginning of the year, I went with Gideon Yago to Sumatra to cover the tsunami relief effort. And then that same year, because of the 2005, so there was a tsunami in Indonesia and took out 150,000 people in Sumatra alone. Later that year, in 2005, Hurricane Katrina.
Oh my God.
And I went with Gideon to New Orleans, and we landed on a the Army flew us from Baton Rouge to the top of the Superdome parking structure. And we got out, and they're like, all right, see you later, guys. And we just walked around New Orleans. This was like before Oprah even got there.
Did you feel that this is amazing? Like, was any of it like out of body experience, or were you just going there as documentarians? Like, let's just.
You do go into a mode. And I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I was a war photographer. And it's so crazy because I cut to a couple of weeks later, I was in New York for a meeting about Eighth and Ocean, about that model show. And I was meeting with an executive that I'd never met before. And I hadn't thought about the stuff that I'd seen yet. And she said, "Oh, you just got back from that? Wow, that must have been crazy. What was that like?" And that was the first moment where like I opened that door in my brain to think about what I'd actually seen. And I started crying.
Oh, wow.
In the meeting, because like I saw all the kids, you know, and this woman just met me 5 minutes before that. And she was just like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Oh my God. And I'm like, no, I just hadn't like thought about it till right now.
Oh my God.
So that was a great interview.
Intense, yeah.
Yeah, so like I was like literally, you know, just going there for a second. I was like, oh my God, I'm sorry. Like, you know what I mean? Ended up getting that job, thank goodness. But that's why MTV News was so fascinating to be a part of, because you can be running around, laughing, talking about music, but then also I got to cover these two massive events and to tell those stories. And that was all because of MTV News.
Are you still friendly with any of the MTV guys?
If I see Carson, I say hi.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for that guy, though. Wow. I mean, right?
Can you believe that he...
Well, you want the most random story?
Yeah.
My son's name is Benjamin, and last year he was playing baseball. And then one day I went to go watch his game. I was a little bit late, so my wife and my daughter were there. And then unbeknownst to me, I look up, and on my son's team, there's this other kid and then his mom, and his mom turns around and I go, Soo Chin? She's like, Billy? I'm like, Soo Chin Pak? I'm like, she's like, Billy? I'm like, what the fuck are you doing here?
That's amazing.
Why are you in LA? Why is your son on my son's baseball team? She's like, why are you here? Why are you in LA? Because we used to hang out together.
That's so funny.
MTV News. And so Soo Chin Pak's son was on my son's baseball team. So that was random.
Amazing.
But yeah, no, I mean, look, it was all fun times and crazy times. And but no, I mean, I don't talk to anyone regularly. Having kids will do that to you.
You're a super fascinating guy. Thank you for telling these stories, and like your memory is amazing, so vivid. You're able to really tell them in a compelling way. So I just really can't thank you enough. Like I've been wanting to talk to a showrunner, executive producer for these shows for a very, very long time, and a lot of them can't do it for one reason or another. So I really genuinely appreciate your time.